So, welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we are finally taking a look at the New Zealand Land Wars, Maori Wars. And it's from 1845 to 1872. This is a game that's published by Legion Wargames, and it was designed by John Paniski. We played a couple of his games. So, a very unique topic. You could see very evocative artwork on the box.
I emphatically have never played a game on this subject.
And I'm not going to say that this is the only one, because every time I do, there are more. But this is kind of the most recent one. And production-wise, this thing's excellent.
Well, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful product.
Yes, it's
definitely.
We'll show you a map on the board, and it's beautiful. You can watch the unboxing to kind of see more of that. But it's
it's beautiful, and it's clean, right? It looks good. It's fairly easy. We struggled with the names only because the names are, Wakanaka and...
Well, yeah. It's a lot of
Waikato.
Old Maori names, not in our lexicon.
Very easy to find things. I think the charts were great. Just a very nice product.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios in this as well.
Yeah.
So you can play kind of like the full campaign game, or you can divide it up into smaller bites. If you just want to play a little bit, because that way you can cut it down to, I'm just going to play this for 4 turns.
Yeah.
And that's take you like an hour.
I'm going to say there's
doesn't take long.
10 scenarios maybe.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There are a lot.
And it just increases the size and the kind of layout of what
ours focused on the northern province of Auckland, right?
Yes. And there's just a lot of cool stuff here. Because it's not really a prototypical kind of war that was fought, and so the war game reflects that how it does. There's a lot of interesting mechanics, and the units that you have, the Maoris have different kind of abilities and different modifiers for different types of attacks in certain situations, whereas the more kind of trained and disciplined but maybe less reactive British forces are different in other situations.
Yeah, talking about theme, I think thematically John, the designer, he has a real skill and talent in capturing theme. He uses, they're BD chits, I can't remember what the acronym, battle report chits, just some of the attack styles of the Maori and the Queenite units, very cool, just gives you a very different feel. In the Maori, it's all hand-to-hand, right? They don't have guns. It's spears and knives. And
the rule is they cannot use artillery.
Right, but thematically, you get that feeling. There's that feeling of bravery, that feeling of, let's just make an attack. Because there's some chits that really support them. There's some other things that make it better for them. So you're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to play it thematically. So he did a fantastic job of capturing that and distilling it down into a very playable game.
And one of those kind of elements, and I think it's one of the really defining parts of this game, is the Bush Raider.
Very cool.
This game. Basically, there's kind of an off-map box, which can be replaced with
the map,
like a full mini version of the map. You can use this instead of just a holding box with some markers. And basically, the Maori units, the Queenites, I think Rangers and Militia can do this as well.
Because those are all the indigenous tribe peoples, right?
Yes.
The Militia are local trained people
the New Zealand
who have
militia.
been trained in... Previously, that they've obviously allied themselves with the British.
They know the land,
the tactics
but they're
and the land.
not kind of full conscripts with professional training. They're attacking in a more guerrilla style, using the land to their advantage. And how that works is... you select it. It's only a couple units, but you take them off map and you put them in this holding box. And from this holding box, they can spring to basically anywhere else within the province that they came from. So you can move from one end to the other in 2 turns. You can do that. Or you can launch attacks at them, raids. So if you have kind of infantry units out in the open where they're not in a settlement, you can have Maori units just pop up out of that box and do an attack. And the attack is powerful.
Because you get a modifier, +1 DRM.
Yes. And then the attacks are reversed. Normally, a normal attack, the defender fires first.
Right.
It does all the hits and losses. and then the attacker attacks with whatever's left.
Yeah.
In these raids, you come in, you have a modifier, and you attack first, do all your damage, and then whatever's left gets to kind of shoot back.
And that's key, the way the CRT is broken up, and the combat system is, if you become disrupted because of an attack against you, you then can't move forward and attack. You kind of fall back, and so that can be very powerful, particularly with those raids, to minimize the amount of return fire that's received. So that was something I know. This was our first play as the Maori. I think you've really got to use that to your advantage, and I think even as the Queen Knight, you should be pulling units back and moving them out in that way, so that you don't exactly know where everything is all the time.
Well, and it forces kind of the British player to really consider: do I vacate all of my settlements kind of in the raid
and leave them undefended?
Because it's really easy for you can
pop up.
You can't launch a bush raid on a settlement, but you can just pop up guys, and then a turn later they can then start attacking normally. Yeah. So you can get into some really bad trouble there, because the settlements are really important for supply in this game. Yeah. Supply is just, on this scale, on this time period, kind of mid-19th century, supply is just, are you close to a settlement?
Yeah.
It's kind of 3 hexes away from a fort or a town or a settlement kind of thing. And so they have to be really careful about those, and you lose a key one, and your supply line gets broken, you kind of get into some real trouble there. But this raiding aspect, and you can use this map instead of just the box, because it's possible to have my bush raiders attacking other bush raiders kind of off map.
Yeah.
So you're trying to vie for control of this bush raider
fascinating.
box.
Yep.
Because if you've got 3 guys in there, I'm not going to move just one in, because you'll just attack him next turn. Why did I do that?
Yeah.
So there's a ton of stuff to do.
And that in essence distills down into a game within the game.
Yes.
That becomes an element where both of us have those raiding units, and it's a matter of, well, point, counterpoint. Did Alexander move 2 guys in there? Well, I better move 2 guys in there. The difference is the Maori can move 3 in, right? I can move 3 from the map into the box. I think you can only do 2 as the Queen Knight. So there is an advantage there for the Maori, but that it becomes a game within the game. And I really like that, because we had to think about that. We had to think about supply. We had to think about how combat worked. Very interesting.
And the way that you win this game is scenario based. So there's stipulations about, here's what you've got on the board. You're trying to kill everything. Though. That's the reality of what it is. But you kill stuff, and that gains you victory points. But the victory point, there's only one marker, and it's on a swing. It's on a pendulum.
So if I gain 3 and you gain 2, all of a sudden I have 1 VP.
Yes.
So it's a back and forth struggle, like a tug of war.
Yeah, and it's possible if you get off the end of the track, it's a major victory for one of the sides, and that's how it automatically ends.
Yeah.
So if it is possible, with a couple of really good attacks, taking some key pieces, getting some towns and settlements, if you could do that, without any answer, you could end the game. Which, so you never, if the opponent's got 3 or 4, you're like, okay, I got to protect my settlements from, surprise attacks or bits and pieces. There's a lot to consider in this game.
Yeah.
But with that said, mechanically, not super complicated.
No, the movement's very simple, pretty standard. Combat's fairly standard. I don't know that there was anything in this game that we saw that made us really. We had to think a little bit about some of the BD chits and their language, right? The way it was written. But other than that, this is a very standard war game with some neat elements like the Raider box.
Yeah, and those BD chits, basically during a combat, I declare I'm attacking you. The defender might choose to try and evade if they wish, and then you just pull one of these chits out of a cup.
And there are 40 of them.
Yes, and then you basically, whatever chit you get, you consult the table, which has all the chits on there.
Yep.
And some of the things are hilarious.
Yeah.
Some of it's like...
abandoned defenses.
Yeah, so the defender just runs away, basically, and leaves their village undefended. So
supply breakdown was really bad for you.
Yeah, that was awful.
That one time.
And the defender applies these. And so you have to read it in that way.
Yes.
But some of it...
And that's what I always kept forgetting. I'm like, Alexander, why aren't you doing this? Oh, because I'm the defender. I pulled it, so it happens to you.
And I tried to read things as literally as possible, where it says, do this. So like, that's what we're
We'll
doing.
do that,
And
yeah.
it's absolutely killer at times.
Yeah.
Or some things it's like you get a free kind of improvement of a settlement into like a fortification.
Right.
Which can be, it's not going to be in that hex, but you can reinforce somewhere over here.
Yeah.
Or we had ones where a village just changed the sides.
Yeah, and that happened. It's
3
funny.
times.
3 times within our first
2 turns.
5 or 6 pulls, which was hilarious. Some of them are
fun.
very devastating, and some are just like, okay, that's not bad.
But I like that they have 3 or 4 of those in there. Where
They
it's
do,
like,
so it can happen against you and for you.
yes, or you could just get hosed and all 3 of them happen to you and it's terrible.
Right.
But that's kind of the chaos.
The luck
And I
of the
know that John, when he designs, he likes to put a lot of some unknown elements in there.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those that does that and does it well.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that part of it as well.
I did
as
too.
much as sometimes you're just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, this is...
Well, anytime there's that kind of an event, you got to understand, it just happened, right? You just got to deal with it. You can't mope over it. You can't be upset about it. It just happened. And understand it could happen to your opponent. So it's just like you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that we talked about, the combat system I thought was really cool. Every unit really just represents 1 strength point.
Yeah.
The way you increase that is having a greater force versus a lesser force. So you need to make sure you're attacking with 2 or 3 units so that you're rolling on a more favorable chart.
Yes.
It's just a different way of working the CRT concept that I thought worked really well once we figured it out.
Very simply as
Yes.
well. It really, I thought it was a very clean system for what it was. There's basically 3 columns, and it's strong force, equal force, weaker force.
Yeah. Yep.
Is my force stronger than yours? Yes. I'm going to roll in the good table.
The greater force table.
It's that simple.
And it is better.
Yes,
you can
significantly.
You can hit on a roll of a 2, whereas some of the others, it's like you got to roll a 5 to a weaker force attacking. You got a 4, a 4 or higher.
But yeah, when you start getting into modifiers, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
If you're attacking a fortress, you want to be on that stronger table because you have to absorb a -2 modifier to a die roll. Well, suddenly your 4 becomes a 2.
Yeah.
You better be on that greater force for that to actually do anything.
So I mentioned at the beginning I didn't feel that there was any concepts new. There aren't. It's just a new way of looking at that CRT. And I liked it. I thought that was a very good job.
Yeah, it was a very creative applications of some cool wargaming concepts. I think what we'll do is I'll show you the board a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at least the kind of the northern part of the map. You can see it's just a muted colors, but it's a beautiful looking map, and it has kind of all the names of the provinces and the towns and settlements. It just looks like an old school map with the font that they've used and some of the design work that they've done. What we'll do is we'll focus a little bit more up here where we had some action, just so we can kind of see that here. Okay. You can see the units. They have a very iconic look to me. I think it just looks great on the board. There's a lot of different things going on here. So there's blue New Zealand militia units, there's red British units, we have a commander, infantry unit, infantry units, there's a British gunboat, there's artillery pieces, so you get a lot of variety in what you've got out there. You also have these light grey units, they're Queenite tribe units, they're allied with the British, and then you have these kind of very, very dark charcoal grey, almost black units, and those are the Maori units, the indigenous peoples. And that's the kind of the 2 main antagonists. So the idea of the game is basically to score more victory points than the opponent, obviously, but to do that, you're trying to eliminate units, eliminate enemy settlements, and kind of just get them over the top. You'll see a little victory track here. This is a pendulum. You start at 0, it's a swing. Maori gains some points, British gains some points. Maori gains more points, British gains some points. And it's trying to get off the end of the track gives you an auto victory. That's difficult to do, but it is possible. And then at the end of however many turns you're playing, wherever it is, that's who wins. And you'll see here, a 1 victory point or a 0 is a draw. There's a minor victory, and then the green is a major victory for either side. So that's kind of how you're trying to get that to go. Movement is this factor that's printed on all these counters. This is a 3 for militia. The Queenites and the Maoris have 4. So they're indigenous, they're used to the terrain, there's less of them, the units are smaller so they move more mobile. The combat factors are simple. Everything is a 1. It's just how many counters do you have? There's a stacking limit of 4 in almost every instance. There's some restrictions on rough terrain, but you try to get stacks of guys, move and attack. You move guys, there's rallying with leaders, but basically it's moving and doing combats and attacking. To attack, I have a stack here. I declare them as an attacker against an adjacent stack, quite simply. As soon as I declare that attack, the opponent here has an undisrupted unit. They do have a disrupted one as well, but the undisrupted unit has the option to try and leave. They can roll a dice if they wish, and if they roll high enough, say they roll a 6, they could retreat him out of here and get it to go. So he's going to kind of retreat, put him back to a kind of a space away from the combat. Now, that's optional, so we're not going to do that because we want to fight as many guys as possible. What happens is if I do or don't evade, the defender pulls one of these battle dispatch chits that we talked about, and they're randomized in a little cup. And you just pull one, and we have number 25. That's what we're going to go with. So you consult the chart, and number 25 down here is effective ambush. And it means defending player conducts an immediate raid on the main map or in the Bush Raider map box and add an additional +1 DRM. Ignore this action if you have no units in the Bush Raider box map. And what you do is you look down in this Bush Raider box map that's down in this corner of the map, and unfortunately the Maoris don't have any in the box, and it's off camera, but there's a box down there that has those held. But these little chits give you just some extra stuff that can and will happen, and it's going to shake up the game a lot. You know, if I had units in that box for the Maori, they can kind of jump out down here and do an immediate raid on these guys, because they're just out in the open. I do a bush raid. So you can get some really cool stuff happening through those chits. Sometimes you get kind of a no effect, or sometimes terrible things happen to you. In this instance, we'll go with nothing happened because we didn't have any units in that box. Then what happens is, if you had an artillery piece or a gunboat that was in range, they would fire separately on their own little combat results table. We don't have any. So then the defender fires. The defender has only one undisrupted unit. And we have here only one undisrupted unit as well. So you have to have undisrupted units to do return fire. And in this instance, I have 2 units total, including undisrupted, and 3 units total. So technically the British do have a greater sized force. So we're going to roll on the lesser force table for the Maoris doing their kind of defensive fire. So you roll a d6 and you roll a 5 and you consult the table here, and it's 1 disruption and they have to retreat as well. So you got some decisions to be made there. Do I disrupt the only guy that can fire and would fire, or do I risk disrupting another guy who would then maybe be eliminated? They'd have to make a check. A lot of the times you're going to play it cautious and you're going to disrupt this last guy. So you put a little disruption marker out and you're basically going to call off your attack. And you say, that was effective defensive fire. This is something that we talked about. Sometimes the stacks get a little unwieldy in this. You just got to make sure you have everything under one marker to kind of keep those stacks manageable. But if you've got 4 units, a leader, an artillery, a disruption, and they're in a fortress, things can get... You might need to tweeze this out for this one. But basically, this is the chart that you're looking at, and it's fascinating. So here you basically, do I have a smaller sized force, an equal force, or a greater force? And you calculate that, and then you roll on which chart. There are very few modifiers in this game. There's a couple, but not many. So really, you're trying to get good stacks and move them around, or pick opportune moments to do your attacks. But really, it's that simple. If I eliminate a unit, I get a victory point. If I as the British, if they kill a village, they get a victory point. If they kill the PA, we call them, this is basically a level 2 village. If I destroy that, it becomes a village. That's a victory point for killing this. Then if I kill the village, that's another victory point. So it's the equivalent of 2. But the PAs are basically a fortification. So even if there's no one in it, they roll defensive value. If I attack a village, they don't roll anything. It's just an empty village, basically. I just have to make sure that I don't basically fumble my attack roll. But that's combat. It's really simple. You have some kind of very structured. The rulebook was very good, guiding through this step, this step, this step, this step, this step. But the chaos comes from those die rolls, because if you roll poorly, there's a lot of no effects. And if the defensive fire is good, you can end up in a really bad spot. And conversely, if the defensive fire is terrible, but the attacker rolls really well, they can kind of wipe stacks pretty quickly. But those BD chits give you a ton of unpredictability in the game. Sometimes, like this, the one we pulled, you do a bush raid somewhere else on the map. Just totally throw a spanner in the works of something else that might have been happening. Sometimes it's something that directly affects this combat, where they have to vacate. If they're in a village themselves, they might have to vacate it. Or an attack gets called off because they don't have any supply. So there's some very specific stuff. Well, there's other things that do a lot of other functions in the game. But honestly, that's a lot of what the game is. It's moving, positioning, trying to keep yourself in supply. That's something that's really important. Basically, the Maori and the Queenites, each of their villages can support X amount of units on the board. Doesn't really matter where they are. But the British have their location's very important. They can be 3 spaces away from like a fort, settlement, or town. But settlements can only be built by New Zealand militia. They cannot be built by infantry. So you have to bring up these blue militia guys, if only to build settlements to have a supply for your units fighting in the field. I can't just bring guys and land them here from a ship, and they sit there because they're out of supply. They start becoming disrupted themselves. So there's a lot to consider in doing this effectively, but rules are simple, and there's a lot of depth to the tactics of this game and how you execute your strategies. You do have to overcome some randomness from those chit rolls and the dice rolling, but the game gives you a lot of fun, a lot of uncertainty in that, and that's something that I know that John Paneski was going for. You never want to be able to know exactly what's happening. Sometimes things happen in war, and the chits do that for you. The bush raiding, you have control over where you do that and how you execute that, but it puts your opponent on edge. You have to be really careful. Well, I brought up my militia to build those settlements up here. Well, if the Maori have guys in the bush raider box, they can just bring them on here, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, I can't get back to defend my settlements. And on the next turn, because these guys can't do anything when they move on the board, next turn though, they can just move in, start attacking my settlements. If they start destroying these, each one of those destroyed is a VP for the Maori. So all of a sudden, this is going to start swinging their way. And now if I had units down here, they're suddenly going to be out of supply if I go and try and kill these. And things can get really nasty with these bush raidings. If you use them well, you can catch your opponents flat-footed. It's just an excellent level of depth in this game within the game, which I really, really enjoyed. So that's kind of a bit about how the game functions, and we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts here. So that was a look at the map and how combat works and some movement. Like you saw, map's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's kind of this muted color, but it's this cool mix between it looks like an old map,
absolutely,
but it's still really clean and an excellent wargame map.
Yep.
The
hexes are very clear.
The only sacrifice that they made was there's no
numbers.
There's no hex numbers.
Yeah.
So there were times where it's like, look at Auckland, and then 4 hexes northwest of this, put this. So there's a little bit in that setup chart where you're like, okay.
And that just took some getting used to it, but they had a good explanation of how to do that in the rules. So, but yeah, it looks exactly like a map a commander would have been carrying around to identify, where they were and what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I just like having a game that looks nice whilst I'm playing.
Yeah.
The counters I think are really nice. They've got this kind of simplistic but kind of distinctive artwork on them.
Yep.
No clutter on them. It's just a great looking game to play on a table, and I like that. And once we set it up, the gameplay was lightning fast.
Yeah, we went through 4 rounds in about hour and a half. We had a couple breaks in there.
Yeah, and
very fast playing
and learning the game as well.
Yeah.
This is not a long game by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
Once you start getting all the other units and playing 10 rounds, yes, it can be a sizable game, but the gameplay moves along. I don't feel like I was like, just go. The turns just go by at a good clip.
And I was a little worried about that because these stacks get pretty dense. Your stacking limit is 4, plus you can have a village and a couple disrupted markers. I could conceivably see 6 to 8 counters in one.
Yeah.
And the map, they're smaller counters. So what did I say at the beginning? Where's your tweezers? And we couldn't find them. But that was my only concern with it. But I think it worked out very well. And I think in the bigger scenarios, you're not going to necessarily have as much.
Spread out, maybe.
I felt like we were really condensed, but I liked that. Yeah. So very, very fun game. I loved the rating box. I love that whole rating concept. I loved the thematic implementation of the history of this game. I thought he did an excellent job. It's also very interesting. His father, I think one of the reasons he wanted to design this game was his father was stationed on a ship in this area during, was it World War II? Sorry, but I thought that was very interesting that he had that desire to do this.
43.
Yeah, so during World War II, he had a desire to design this game because of his family history, and I think that's really cool. And because of that, I think his passion for the subject showed through.
Oh yeah.
And Randy Line with Legion doesn't let a bad product get out of their door. They always do a good job on their games. We love their games. We've played probably half a dozen and really enjoy them.
And then the map was designed by Niels Johansson,
who is a fantastic artist.
Unbelievable. I can't say enough about the map. Yeah. I think
he did the art for those mini Native American games from High Flying Dice games. Remember that?
Kekionga?
Kekionga.
Oh,
same artist, same style.
Those are also great.
And I love those games.
A totally different looking game aesthetically, but also beautiful.
Yeah, so he did a great job on the art for this as well.
So I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Maori Wars. It's the New Zealand Land Wars, 1845-1872. This is from Legion. You can still get this game. It is excellent, great solo game as well.
Yeah, you could play this solo.
Best possible move on both sides.
This one might creep into my top 10 from 2018. I really liked it.
It's playable, it's fun, it's different, and I like that in a game.
Yeah.
This adds something to my collection.
Definitely. Yep. I'm glad that I got this game. One, it's John Paniski, but two, it's a neat subject. I'm excited.
So I appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.